Chapter 1. Nora tipped her hat forward above her hazel eyes. The sound of Jasper's hooves echoed throughout the grove as they cantered down the dusty road. Nora Hollister had an affectionate habit of talking to her horse as she rode. "Isn't it a wonderful day, Jasper?" Jasper shook his head in agreement. Jasper was her 10-year-old Appaloosa gelding, a birthday gift to Nora from her mom and dad when she'd finished college. Pam and Joe Hollister had been killed 3 years earlier on a business trip in Jacksonville in her dad's new Piper Malibu. Engine trouble shortly after takeoff brought the plane down near Lakeland. Riding Jasper seemed to bring her closer to the parents she had lost that day. He was the link. Nora coveted the quiet of the grove early in the morning and the time it allowed in preparation for the day ahead. Her family had owned this grove and cattle ranch for over a century. The first Hollister had arrived in Florida shortly after the Seminole Wars ended in 1858. Only the bravest had settled in Florida during those turbulent times. The Hollisters owned 210 acres divided between an orange grove and a cattle enterprise. The sun was barely up, and she could already feel the heat of the day rising from the dirt road. Even in early April, the sun could be fierce. Soon, the cool sea breeze off the bay would collide with the warmth of the land and bring the afternoon showers so typical of the Florida summer. Birds called to each other and sang their intimate songs. Baritone frogs croaked in the pond. Jasper pounded the road, while Nora's leather saddle creaked softly beneath her. A slight breeze rustled the palm trees. The scent of ripe citrus was strong in the balmy air as the last of the oranges were being picked. The sun, rising in its azure blue and rose-pink colors, always made her happy. She pushed her hat back up and, looking to the sky, watched a flock of white ibis glide forth on their way to some watery feeding grounds. Her grandfather and the farm were all Nora had left of her family and her childhood, and she treasured both. She'd recently implored Gramps to let her take a hand in the running of the day-to-day operations of the farm, but so far that request had been repeatedly waved away by the old man. She had worked hard attaining her MBA, and she desperately wanted to deploy those business skills toward the good of their family legacy, but the cantankerous old gentleman was at this point immovable. "Women just don't belong in business," her Gramps would say every time she brought up the subject. If Gramps didn't relinquish some control soon, she might just seek a job further north, away from the blistering Florida heat, and try to garner some genuine appreciation for her talents. Frank Hollister, her Gramps, was fast approaching his 80th birthday. He had the usual health problems that an 80-year-old man would have, and it was probably time for him to take it just a touch easier. But he was a stubborn old country codger and was not interested in turning over the business to anyone else. In addition to the issue regarding managing the business, there was the problem of her grandfather's declining health. Nora was afraid that she would soon find herself her grandfather's caretaker, as opposed to Gramps taking care of her. It wasn't that she wanted to shirk that responsibility. It was the fact that thinking about it made her a little sad and nostalgic for her childhood. And what about the inevitable, her grandfather's death? A life without her grandfather was really depressing to think about. It was during times like these that Nora most missed her parents' guidance. Later that morning, Nora rode Jasper to the packing house with Gramps' lunch. Lunchtime was still 2 hours away, but it would be too hot then for a ride, so it had to be now. Rosita, their housekeeper and cook, had found Gramps' lunch on the counter by the back door, left behind. It had become increasingly apparent that Gramps was getting more forgetful these days. Cajoling him into seeing a doctor for anything was never easy, but this was a reminder for Nora that she had to try again. Nora rounded a corner, and the packing house came into view. It was a squat green metal and cinder block building situated in the middle of the grove. Unassuming as it was, it represented Central Operations Headquarters in terms of running the Hollister farm. As a child, the packing house had been her very own playground, and the workers and their families on the farm were her friends. It was nearing the end of the picking season. Soon, the workers would move on as the sweltering days of summer began. The migrant workers, most of whom started laboring before sunrise, dropped off their early loads of oranges and then usually hung around the packing house for a while. To say it is hard labor picking oranges doesn't do the task justice, as almost 100% of all picking was still done by hand. The pickers would climb a ladder with an empty sack slung over their shoulder, with each sack eventually holding about 200 of whatever citrus they were assigned to pick that day. First to ripen were the grapefruit, followed by different varieties of oranges. Flatbed trailers carried empty tubs into the grove, with each tub expecting a capacity of 900 pounds of ripe fruit. A special truck, called a goat, would hoist the filled tubs with a hydraulic boom, then drive them back to the packing house for sorting. The fruit would then be conveyed to factories, where it was destined to be made into juice or sold to distributors for sale at grocery stores. Agents did all the deal-making in air-conditioned Tampa and seldom came to the sweltering groves in Mayaca or Arcadia. The workers dutifully checked in with their supervisor, Tito Ramirez, at the packing house. He was not well liked by the workers. Tito was short and thin, but what he lacked in size, he made up in sheer, unadulterated attitude. His family was originally from Cuba and had settled in Ybor City after finding work in the cigar factories there. He didn't like factory work where he had been continually ordered around. In the Hollister packing plant, however, he was El Jefe, the boss, calling his own shots, ordering the others around. He'd been with the farm for 4 years and had become even more difficult to work with this year, his arrogance growing. He was abrupt and surly with the workers and assumed a superior attitude toward them, which the workers chafed at. Nora coaxed Jasper into the packing house yard just as Gramps was talking to Tito in the packing bay. If she was any judge of body language, an argument was in progress. Both parties appeared quite agitated about something. Dismounting, she tied Jasper to a ring set into the wall just for him, and then, bolting the 7 stairs to the loading platform, she left Jasper to slake his thirst in the watering trough. She approached the 2 men cautiously and listened.
"I don't care what those stupid migrants say. Do they even know how to count? I can, and I'm good at it. Who are you going to believe, me or them?"
Tito spat out.
"Now, listen here, Tito. I expect that the ticket book is going to match up every day. If I hear any more complaints, I'm going to do more than just talk to you. You understand me? I'll not have these workers cheated. They work long and hard just to make the money they do, which isn't a lot, but whatever it is, they need all of it,"
Gramps said angrily, his voice rising.
"Do what you will."
Tito turned, raising his arms, dismissing the conversation as he stormed away, mumbling to himself. Nora closed the distance, asking, "Gramps, what was that all about?"
"Our workers complain that Tito's not giving them proper credit for all the fruit they collect. They think he's a cheat,"
Gramps thundered as he turned to go back to his office. "How does he get off treating them like that? They deserve to get paid for all the work they do. We've built a good reputation here, and that's why these workers have returned to us year after year, for generations. Gosh, they've raised their children in our groves," Nora interjected, her indignation growing. She felt a heightened flush on her face, and not from the Florida heat. She'd grown up playing with some of these workers as a child and enjoyed traditional meals with them. They were like family to her. She would not tolerate them being cheated or abused.
"I understand, sweetheart, but we have to find a way to prove it. Tito's the only one checking them in. He had a fit when I suggested that someone assist him with the ticket book. I really do believe that something's going on."
He carried on talking while walking to his office, his old dog Rex right on his heels.
"Too many complaints from different workers for there not to be something to it."
Gramps sat behind his cluttered desk. He shuffled and tossed a few things aside.
I'm getting too old for this.
Nora stood before him with her hands on her hips. Gramps, this is why I went to college and got a business degree. Please, let me help you. I can do a lot of this paperwork, talking to the agents and other things for you. It's been 4 years since I graduated, and you won't let me do more than order equipment and talk to the Department of Agriculture. I want more to do. I need more to do. My degree is being wasted. Nora paced up and down in the small room, working up another good head of steam. Besides the fact that she did want more to do, she also knew her Gramps was wearing out. She was afraid for his health, and she had to find a way to convince him to let her help.
You're right. I promise next season you can take over this office. I'll step down a bit.
You say that every year, but it never happens. The start of picking season next year will be the same as this one, Gramps. If I can't work here, I'll have to find a job in another grove or quit the business altogether.
I'm sorry, Nora,
Gramps said, standing up and motioning for her to stop her pacing. Suddenly, he grabbed her shoulders and looked into her eyes. She looked so much like her mother, Pam, with the same chestnut hair and deep brown eyes. She also had her mother's willful spirit. His son had made a great choice when he had taken Pam as his wife. Releasing his grip on the startled Nora, he said,
I'll tell you what. You come in here tomorrow and you can start by helping organize this office. The end of the season is coming. The office will be yours next year, and I'll only be here if you have questions. I had planned on passing the operation over to your father. That can't happen, and it's time for you to take charge.
Nora read between the lines and knew what the old man meant. She was still a girl to him. If she had been born male, this moment would have happened before this. Her Gramps was a wonderful man, but it was 1986, and he was still stuck in the 1950s, she thought. You better mean it this time, because I mean it. I work or I'm gone.
I meant it, too. It'll give me some time to deal with Tito,
Gramps said. Nora pointed out the paper bag with his lunch. Rosita said you forgot your lunch again. Can we please have the doctor give you a once-over?
I don't want that old quack poking around my insides when I feel fine. I got a lot on my mind is all,
Gramps fired back. Okay, how about doing it for me? Nora took the old man by the shoulders, just as he had done with her a moment ago, and looked him in the eyes. You're all I've got, and I'm afraid to lose you. Please, Gramps, just to make sure nothing is brewing inside you that we need to take care of. She touched his chest and gave him a look that she hoped would make him cave in.
Sure, okay,
he said reluctantly and gave in as she prayed he would.
You call a quack and set it up.
Nora gave Gramps a hug and batted him on the shoulder. I'll call tomorrow. As she was riding home, it dawned on her that Gramps missed her dad as much as she did. He was holding on, working, afraid to recognize that his son would not be taking over the business. She felt sorry for the older man and for herself. They were both still grieving in their own way.